This is a follow-up to my first video about captioning videos, specifically the section where I describe some time-saving tricks for correcting auto-generated captions in Microsoft Word. Even with those tricks, it's still annoying how many fiddly tasks you have to perform, like for instance, every time you insert a full stop, a period, having to manually capitalise the next sentence. I don't know how much time this is taking up, but I do know it's draining my will to live slightly, so I wanted to try to find a fix. Luckily, these are the kinds of very logical, very uniform steps that computers love taking off your hands. So I've written a macro to do just that. A macro is just a tiny little bit of code that goes through some predefined sequence of steps to do things to the document, usually in response to some particular thing the user does. Here's my example file. I've got the macro turned on, and you'll see that every time you type a full stop at the end of a word, it will cap up the next word. It doesn't do it in the middle of words, but it will do it if you're one space after the word, which is where you'll often end up if you're moving around the text by holding the Control key down and using the arrow keys. And for that reason, I've made the same adjustment for commas. Obviously without the capping up, it just saves you having to move the cursor back a space. I've also changed the function of two of the neighbouring keys to make two other common editing tasks quicker. Semicolon now doesn't type a semicolon, it just deletes the word your cursor is in or at the start or end of. It's particularly satisfying, I find, to be able to go through the page quickly swatting the ums and ers out as you go. And the slash key now toggles the case settings from lower to capped up to all caps, like Shift and Function F3. What if you actually want to type a slash or a semicolon? I doubt anyone else on earth uses semicolons in captions, but I certainly do. So the macro makes a few more changes so that you can just hold down Control with those keys and they will do the normal thing. Similarly, Control comma or Control full stop to get those keys to behave absolutely normally. None of this affects anything that happens with Shift held down. That's all just normal. Now, there are two different ways you might be able to use all this to really speed things up. First way, I mentioned last time that probably the biggest time loss if you use a mouse to go through the text is continually taking your hand off to type things on the keyboard and then moving it back, which is why I originally advised you to do everything with the keyboard. But the macro seriously cuts down on two-handed keyboard tasks, so you may find you can just leave your mouse hand on the mouse most of the time. Second way is keyboard only. One hand rests on the editing keys I just showed you, one hand on the arrow keys, stretching to Control, Shift, page down and so forth as appropriate. This may feel a bit clunky at first, you'll probably keep pressing the wrong keys, but with practice you can become hair-raisingly fast and accurate. Keyboard only is probably the best approach for relatively heavy editing, where for instance you've got something to fix in every line. The mouse method is more suited to swooping over a relatively clean text, making light edits. Also, I've included in the macro shortcuts for two more general changes which will hopefully be useful. Firstly, the iFix. A lot of auto-generated subtitles are very shy of capital letters to the extent that the word I on its own and in forms like I'm and I've comes in as lowercase. If you press Ctrl Alt I, it will go through the whole document and perform a reasonably intelligent fix. Secondly, I mentioned that swatting out the hesitations is satisfying, but in fact the auto-transcripts of hesitations out of YouTube in particular seem to be pretty regular, either spelled UM or spelled UH, so we can just do a regular search on those. Ctrl Alt U will take every isolated UM and UH and encase it in a distinctive set of nested brackets. And then once you've done that, Ctrl Alt D will take all those bracketed hesitations out. Why the two-step process? Because I know you lot, it's sod's law that you'll need to caption something about the University of Hertfordshire or Maastricht or some such place where the letter group UH or UM appears regularly and is supposed to be there. The brackets give you the chance to check through for false positives before deleting. And if you change your mind about the whole palaver, pressing Ctrl Alt U again while you've got some of those brackets in the text will take them all out again. So, if this macro sounds like it would help you, you are very welcome to download it. I've put a link in the YouTube description as usual. I haven't been able to test installation on anybody else's system, but it should be simple if you're running a version of Word from the past 10 years. Let me show you for the current Office 365 version. Firstly, if you've got it as a zip archive, unzip it. It's a .bas file, don't ask me why. Note where you've put it, go into Word and in the main view press Alt and Function key F11. that brings up a separate window where techie things such as the adding of macros are done. We're going to add the macro to your normal template. And if you didn't know you had a normal template, you do now, every Word user does. If you know about Word templates or putting macros in individual files, you'll already know what to do if you want something different. If this means nothing to you, then just do what I show you and it should be fine. So, where it says normal with this weird looking icon, right click and select import file. Find the .bas file we were just talking about, select open, and you should be able to see it if you open modules. Here is what the actual code looks like, should you be curious. Now, close that window, and in fact the macro is now fully installed. You just need a way to get at it. We're going to put it on the quick access toolbar, otherwise known as the bit at the top. Click that downward pointy chevron thing, more commands, in the choose commands from drop down, pick macros, and you want the quick caption edits routine that has set up in capitals. Press add, and now modify is where you can pick an icon for it. For some ineffable Microsoft reason, it just expects you to choose from this set of standard icons, which were all clearly designed for some other original purpose entirely. I'm going to go for this one because it at least looks like a full stop. Okay, and we're done. And you can see the full stoppy thing in the bit at the top. I've designed it as a toggle. Press it once, all the shortcuts I've described are turned on. Press it again, turns them all off. Let's just see the same thing in Windows 2010, where it's pretty much the same process with a different appearance. Starting from having the .bas file, it's Alt and function key F11, go to normal, import the file, check it's there, yes it is, close that window, downward pointy chevron, more commands, on the drop down go to macros, find the one with setup in caps, add, choose the full stoppy looking thing, OK, and we're done. Press the button and the world is yours. And that's about all you need to know. As ever, there's more information in the description for this video, including the download link and hopefully some documentation, if I ever get around to writing any. I hope this gets you back some of the precious life you would otherwise have lost to subtitling, and I'll see you again soon.